What the Tech is sponsored by Carbonite Online Backup. Automatic, continual, and unlimited backups for your computer. Try it for free at Carbonite.com and use offer code WhatTheTech and get 2 bonus months with purchase. Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website, blog, portfolio, and now an online store. Check out the new commerce solution so you can get started selling your stuff immediately. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on a new account, go to squarespace.com and use offer code WhatTheTech6.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian, and of course I'm joined by Paul Thurrott, as I am each and every week. How you doing, Paul?
Good.
It's very exciting. Very
You're
exciting.
more excited than I am, but I'm okay, I guess.
I'm always excited. I'm always excited to talk about technology with you, Paul.
Oh, good.
Today, Paul is in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am.
For Tech Ed.
Yes.
Are we sure?
No. But yeah, I think that's where I am.
How's it going so far? Today's day
Pretty
2.
good.
Day 2 of Tech Ed.
Yeah.
I'm always curious for you because you do these, but you're never excited
To travel.
Yeah. I mean,
like I'm tilted now.
I'm a little bit like that too. I hate traveling. I hate going to stuff that I know is going to be excruciatingly long. So what is it like to do these trips? Because you just came back from a trip that was pretty long.
Yeah. I wasn't hugely excited to come here, but actually, so far this has been pretty good. I don't know if you watched any of the keynote yesterday, but as far as Tech Ed keynotes go, I actually think that was one of the best ones I've ever had. Brad Anderson was great. They did a kind of a fun video thing up front. They had some really good people on stage talking about the different products. The right people, I guess I would say. So it's been good. It's just been busy. It's already kind of, it's weird. You would think the summer would be kind of dead, but for whatever reason, June is usually pretty busy in the Microsoft world between this show and other shows that they have. You know, they've got Build this year, for example, is happening.
Well, there's a lot of shows in general. There's Computex happening. There's Tech Ed. There's Build. There's WWDC that's going to be happening. June seems to be an extremely busy month for all these conferences.
Yeah, it's strange, in a way, but.
And Tech Ed is more for enterprise, right, in IT.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and this is interesting. Is there a crossover and like, how does the coverage work? Like, do you decide to cover Build? Like, if, let's say, like you, someone that's there for Tech Ed, do you say, okay, well, I'm going to sacrifice going to Tech Ed because I can't go to Build, or how does that work for you?
Oh, well, I'm going to both.
You're going to both. I mean, so there's no sacrificing for you, but it has to be, for example, awful.
Yeah, I mean, it is awful. So Computex, like you said, is happening right now. Obviously, I'm not going to Taiwan. So, I still need to write about some of the stuff that's happening there because the first new PCs and devices based on these new Intel chips we're going to talk about later are being introduced. And that's big news. It's not just big news for me. I mean, or for Windows. I mean, it's kind of big news in general. So, things happen. It's always tough. This has happened in the last couple of trips. You get up in the morning and you get all these emails, from PR people about things that are going on, and it amazes me that Microsoft in a week that is as busy as this would do other stuff, but they do other stuff, and you get these emails, and it's like, guys, you're not making my life any easier today, but. I
was actually surprised at all the news coming out of Computex this year. It seems to be a very, I mean, maybe for me, maybe for other years for other people, but it seems to be a very big Computex as far as the announcements coming from Intel and a lot of the other companies. Yeah. Which we're going to discuss, because before, I don't even know what I'm saying after we're done talking about this, because I'm actually really curious about your workflow and how it works for you, because I don't travel. And
it's not a flow, Andrew.
It's just
it's kind of an explosion.
So like for me, like I don't do travel. My coverage of events, stuff like this is me just going on and just BSing and making a fool out of myself. But you actually have to write So you're going to these conferences? Are you actually sitting there and like taking notes? Are you recording it? How does that work for you? I'm always curious because you get stuff out really fast.
Yeah. All right. Well, so day in the life kind of thing. I mean, well,
Day in the life of
for
Paul
starters, yeah. This particular show, a lot of the news that we're seeing is around Microsoft's what they call Cloud OS type products and services. And a couple of weeks back, I went out to Seattle area and actually had 3 very lengthy days talking to all of these folks about all of this stuff. So I was up on all of this ahead of time. And you have a chance to prepare some stuff in advance when that happens, which is really nice. Looking over what happened yesterday as far as news type announcements, I was not pre-briefed on the Windows 8.1 business features, which I actually have to say I found very interesting. In fact, the more I look into it, the more surprised I am by how much is there. And the other thing we didn't find out about was just a few minor things. There are some new services that have different names than they did a couple weeks ago, which is kind of interesting. And Microsoft announced some new pricing structures for Windows Azure, which is their kind of cloud-hosted everything as a service type platform. So, you've got all that going on. I mean, I have to be at certain things. We have the keynote was a couple of hours long, and we were there for that live. And I take notes during that time. There was a post keynote briefing with the major players from the keynote. Brad Anderson was there. Erwin Vesser, who was from the Windows team. What's his name? Scott Guthrie, who's on Azure, was also there. Kind of a Q&A type of thing that lasted about an hour, and then after that, we had our Windows 8.1 for the enterprise briefing, also an hour long.
Which is a big deal. I mean, because that's really who they're trying to get back. Yeah.
So during all of those things, I took notes and, sat there, wrote on the computer and so forth. When after the enterprise briefing, I spent some time playing with some of the new hardware, which I guess we'll talk about in a little bit. But that was very interesting to me. And I got to play around with Windows 8.1 a little bit as well, the milestone preview build they're going to be releasing publicly in a few weeks. So that was interesting. And then, by this time it's, lunchtime, right? So I ate lunch and then in the press room and then worked from the press room. And you sort of alluded to this, but the normal stuff that I do every day doesn't stop just because I'm here. So I've just described basically half a day of doing nothing but stuff related to the show. And what I need to catch up on is just my regular writing, my email, and my the comments on the blog. And I get lots and lots of comments that need to be moderated. That takes a long time.
I hate you, Paul.
Yeah, you have to get through that. So, by about I think it was 4:00, I had a one-on-one meeting about Windows 8.1. And then I just after that, I think I had about half an hour to kill. And then last night we had a tweet up in a bar in New Orleans, Mary Jo Foley and I, and we went over there.
How did that go?
It went over it really well, actually. It was nice, and the bar we went to was fantastic, and lots and lots of great beers. A crazy number of taps in this place, and we had a pretty good crowd, especially considering the fact that it's 98 degrees outside and 1,000% humidity or whatever it is here, and 20-minute walk from the conference center sounds like it would be not so bad, but actually in this kind of weather, it's kind of crappy. But we were there until pretty late and, cabbed it back and everything. So, I crashed and I figured today I would just sleep as long as I could because they usually actually have 2 days of keynotes at this event. And in the past, they've split it up between enterprise and developer. And they're not doing a developer specific keynote this year because, of course, build is happening in 2 weeks anyway. So that was kind of nice. But then, not by virtue of sleeping in, but in some ways because I slept in, I'm still not kind of caught up on today. And so I've been doing this reverse math to this podcast, thinking, how can I get this stuff done? But I still have a couple things I need to get to today. So I'm not quite caught up, but it's
almost there. So, yeah. Well, there's a couple interesting things that came out. Obviously, the roadmap for Windows 8.1 for Enterprise. Microsoft also spoke about Cloud OS, which you wrote a pretty lengthy article on your website about this, which in my opinion, I'm sure you think the same. This is kind of the future of everything that we're doing right now. is kind of moving everything and offloading some of these services to the cloud rather than localize on your machine. And Live 365 is a perfect example of it being successful and working extremely well. So I want to go into some of those things too. What is the one takeaway that you've taken from this entire 2 days? Is it the fact that they're trying to get enterprise back with 8.1?
With 8.1. Oh, so yeah. I mean, I would say that without knowing anything about 8.1, just looking at what happened with the Windows 8 and knowing that 1 year after Windows 8 is going to come out, it's not hard to sort of theorize about what they're going to do to make this thing right. The funny thing about that is none of that involves the enterprise, because we all sort of know in the back of our minds that no one in business is going to adopt this release because everyone's moving to Windows 7 as it is. Yeah. That OS is maybe perceived as being more preferable to those kind of traditional computers that that most office workers have, and so forth. So you don't really think about that stuff. And so as things about Windows 8.1 leak, we look at all that stuff. We can see that Metro is improving. We can see there are major changes to the PC settings interface, which, by the way, I have to say, in the milestone preview build of Windows 8 8.1 rather, has come together really nicely. That's because
the PC settings were kind of split, right? Some things were in the desktop and some things were in Metro. Had they fully integrated everything on one side?
It's not full yet. I mean, there's always going to be a few things that will be over in the control panel side, but they have moved so much more stuff over to the Metro side. It's actually pretty impressive and far more complete, than it was before. So, they've talked about Windows 8.1 before in kind of general ways. We've talked about stuff. We're going to put the start button back. We're going to allow people to boot to desktop and all that kind of thing. But I have to say, the message around the business use case for Windows 8.1 is actually surprisingly strong. And just from a general theme standpoint, I would say that they have achieved what I think has to be the underlying goal of this kind of release, which is that when you're on a tablet or a touch-based computer, you don't have to go into the desktop a lot, right? Which is kind of the opposite discussion we usually have about Windows 8. Think about it. When you have a touch machine, you don't want to go to control panel to configure something. No, you want to be able to do everything from Metro.
And that was kind of the weird thing where I noticed when I was playing around Windows 8 on a tablet, I was having to go into desktop a lot.
Right.
And I found it a little weird, and that kind of, listen, I kind of know what I'm doing, kind of, but you give this as somebody that has never experienced Windows RT, and they're in desktop, the first thing that I've noticed people doing, and I can speak firsthand from relatives, is that they're trying to download like a exe file and run it.
Right.
And that's not really
It's not going to work.
No. You can try all you want.
It's not going to be a good experience. So there's that. And I think that's important. There will always be some things, for whatever reason, you have to get into control panel. The classic example I have of this is if you add a user, which you can do from the Metro interfaces, if you want to make him an administrator, which you might, you have to do that from the control panel, right? So it's weird that you have to go back and forth.
Is it possible to lock? I know that you're going to be able to lock a screen, but is it possible to lock Metro?
What do you mean by that?
Like I don't know, through admin settings and say, you know what, I don't want this user to ever leave Metro.
Oh, like block out the desktop.
Block out desktop.
No, not yet. But you know what? Based on the group policy stuff I saw for 8.1, I have to think that eventually is coming, and that maybe that's how they step toward getting rid of the desktop. You know, that if you could lock the user out of the desktop, you could prevent them from installing all kinds of crazy applications that could harm the system, and that would be desirable in certain businesses.
I think that'd be phenomenal. I mean, you talk about enterprise, you talk about, let's say, your company has some sort of point of sale software that's going to run on Metro. You lock in only Metro. I mean, you could still go and if there's some sort of issue, you could kind of start the application again, but you pretty much lock in Metro, so you never have to go to desktop. It's not necessary if you have RT.
Sure. And not possible in some ways too. You know, so one of the other big themes in Windows 8.1 for Metro users, if you will, is this notion of, especially for RT, that these systems come with built-in class drivers for certain things like printers and VPNs and so forth. They're not completely full-featured. They don't give you all the stuff that you want. So if you want to do something like connect to a SharePoint site at work, You cannot, do a domain join, but you want to connect to work resources. It's kind of convoluted in Windows RT or through Metro. If you want to do things like or you have to if you go for work, like a Cisco VPN, the installer for that is an executable that runs into Win32. It's not going to work.
It's not going to happen. Yeah.
And other things, there's a wireless printing, wireless display. There's all kinds of technologies like this where if you have Windows 8, you can install the drivers, everything works great. If you have Windows RT, you're kind of screwed. There's nothing you can do about it. So rather than open up the desktop to RT, it kind of shows you the direction they're heading in. They're just building the stuff into Windows 8.1 now. And so they're adding extensibility so that PC makers or even enterprises can roll out something. I'm going to use Cisco. They didn't explicitly say Cisco, but I'll just make this one up and assume it's going to happen because it's so popular. Cisco VPN could be integrated into Windows 8.1 and just arrive as part of the OS.
Yeah.
Rather than having the user
install.
Have to try that thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually really good.
Yeah, it's smart. It is that maturation that we kind of expected, but the flip side of this is the desktop users. 1.4 billion people in the world using Windows PCs. Virtually all of them are doing it on non-touch based traditional computers. And so the other half of this two-headed hydra, or whatever you want to call it, is this notion of people that want to stay on the desktop and don't ever want to see Metro. I want to see Metro as little as possible. And for those people, Microsoft is offering this notion of booting right to the desktop, and also the ability to reconfigure the start button so that instead of going to the start screen, it can go to an all apps view that you can customize so that it is exactly the way you want it and shows.
That's actually phenomenal. That's great.
Yeah. No, it's you can argue it's still. I
mean, because it's not the start menu. You're not getting the start menu back. That's gone.
No, but this new interface is an interesting compromise between the old school start menu that some people are always going to still want, and the new start screen, which some people are always going to hate. And I actually think it's an acceptable compromise within the confines of the notion that, look, they're going in this direction whether you want them to or not. And I think that these kinds of compromises are acceptable, I guess, at the very least.
Sure.
I mean, even laudable. I mean, I think it's interesting that they're doing it. So that's nice, and hopefully in the future, post 8.1, there'll be a little bit more intelligence built into this thing where we'll have that functionality I've been talking about for a while. Where this is software. How come it can't just look at your computer and know what kind of machine it is and act accordingly, or ask you a question? Hey, it looks like you don't have touch. Do you want us to turn off, this thing? And
all this stuff, yeah. And you're hopeful that you're going to see that in the coming builds, I guess.
Well, I don't think we're going to get to that in 8.1.
Not 8.2, possibly.
Maybe, yeah, in the future. One of the things, with Microsoft moving to a model where they're updating their products every year, and in some cases much more often than every year. But let's say Windows once a year, probably I think is a reasonable deadline. They look at what they can do in a year and they act accordingly. And so instead of waiting 3 years for like a big bang kind of update, you can see what you can get in 1 year. And honestly, looking over 8.1, I have to say, it's pretty solid. It's a pretty nice release for that amount of time.
Well, listen, for someone like me that has, my production machines are running on Windows right now, which is crazy because Apple's the best one, for production. According to a lot of people.
All right.
What are you, crazy? You're running a production machine on Windows? All my production machines are Windows, and I fell out of it. I've been using my MacBook Pro. I got a Windows 8 laptop, a brand new laptop, and there was a major disconnect for me. I don't know if that disconnect is attributed to the changes happening or the fact that I'm out of the Windows everyday experience for, a year or two. But I wasn't able to kind of connect. Now that I'm hearing a lot of these changes, I'm more inclined to say, you know what? I want to give it another shot. I want to install it on some of these machines here because I at least have somewhat of control where before I didn't have it.
Sure.
As far as booting into desktop and kind of seeing a familiar thing going on. I'm just giving an example of certain situations. But can you imagine if let's say this was on the Apple side? How do you think the Apple side would have? Would they have welcomed these changes? Like, could you imagine seeing, I'm a little upset. I can't install a DMG file on my iPad. Those things did not happen.
That's,
but like,
we're not going to see that. I mean, because the traditional Apple fanatic type is not necessarily the traditional iPad user, right? In other words, that machine attracts normal people. I think the flip side of this would be the outrage you would, and by the way, do see when they add iPad features back into Mac OS 10. I mean, imagine if they, just said, look, this app launching thing we have in iOS works great. We're going to add it to Mac OS 10. Deal with it. Those people would have been just as upset as Windows people are about the stuff in Windows 8. So I think,
and that might be happening. I mean, that's a possibility. That's a major possibility.
Well, I don't care, to be honest, but I don't know anything about what they're doing with Apple. So
we're going to take a little break, and then I want to talk about some of this new hardware that was announced. I also had a couple questions about the cloud and how Microsoft is going to be handling this for enterprise, because everything is becoming cloud centric. I also noted I had a revelation about iCloud the other day that I want to discuss on the show.
All right.
But since we're on the cloud topic, I want to talk about something on the cloud, and that's Carbonite. Online backup, easy to use, simple to use, one click. You do it once, and it's gone. It's backing up everything automatically. You don't have to worry about, is this file getting backed up? Is that getting backed up? I installed Carbonite on my MacBook Pro probably a couple weeks ago. And I was talking when we were discussing Carbonite about how I didn't have it on my computer, and it was time that I do it. I don't have a lot on here. It's a 256 SSD. All my music is now on the cloud. All my photos are now on the cloud. So it's only a couple files here and there that I'm storing locally on this thing. Installed Carbonite, backed everything up, took about a couple days to kind of get everything going. And once I blew this thing away and I reinstalled OS 10 on this thing, I just put Carbonite back on, re-downloaded everything, and it's there. Like, it never went away. Made it totally, totally easy. So I don't have to worry about getting a flash drive and backing it up. I don't have to worry about hooking up a external hard drive, hooking it up and backing it up. Makes it extremely easy to use. And here's a great offer. If you go to Carbonite.com and you use offer code WhatTheTech, you get 2 bonus months with your purchase. And you can try it for free. So, you see how you like it. It's great. They offer something for everybody. Even if you have an external hard drive, there's even a package with Carbonite that you could back those stuff up to their online backup service. So it's phenomenal. I want to encourage each and every one of you, go to Carbonite.com, use offer code WhatTheTech, and get 2 bonus months with purchase. I want to thank Carbonite for supporting What the Tech. So, Paul, since we're on that topic, I want to kind of go into this. So you wrote something about the Cloud OS and the future of a Cloud OS for Microsoft.
okay.
What did you learn from this as I go and answer the door? Here he is.
What is Cloud OS?
What is Cloud OS?
All right, let's talk about Cloud OS. Cloud OS is a vision that Microsoft has. It's not a product. We're not going to hit 2015 and have something called Cloud OS. But the notion is that Microsoft's server products, which we could sort of think of as private cloud solutions, although I know that's going to irk some people, as well as its actual online services, things like Windows Azure, obviously, but also the SQL Azure stuff and Office 365, Windows Intune, and the on-prem / private cloud management solutions that fall under System Center together. And actually, I should add a SQL Server and then the connectivity tissue stuff like what they're now calling the Azure Pack, the Windows Azure Pack, constitute this Cloud OS vision, that these things work in concert, they orchestrate together, and they provide what Microsoft thinks of as a Cloud OS platform. They are separate platforms, but they're coming closer together. When Windows Azure first launched, it was based on a very heavily modified version of Windows Server. Today, Windows Azure is running on top of stock Windows Server 2012 Hyper-V, for example. And a lot of the learnings in Windows Azure have been pushed back into Server. So it's been sort of that virtuous cycle kind of thing. With Microsoft moving to this devices and services system where they sort of see the company as having these two sides. You can look at the devices side and it's very obvious what falls under devices, but when you think about services, it's a little bit confusing because we think of Microsoft as a software company. But their traditional server products are excellent examples of products that can be moved into online services very easily. Well, I shouldn't say easily. It wasn't like that. I don't want to undermine the amount of the work that went into it, I should say, but smoothly. That whether you're installing Exchange on a server and providing email services to users, or whether you're subscribing to Exchange as a service and providing email services to users, I mean, ultimately, it's a fairly smooth transition there.
What's the how are they? What's the reception like from enterprise users?
Well,
Are they kind of apprehensive?
Yeah, right. So some of them obviously are apprehensive. I mean, it depends on who you're talking about. When you have, I always use the Exchange administrator as kind of the canonical example. You have the guy who maybe they had Exchange 5, and then at some point they upgraded to Exchange 2003 or something, and then maybe over time they finally went to 2010. And I'm sure each one of those migrations seemed like a big deal at the time, because actually, if you know anything about Exchange and about Microsoft servers, you know that there were architectural changes over this time period. You know that at some point, I think Exchange was the very first Microsoft server that only came in a 64-bit version at some point, and now, of course, all their servers are 64-bit only. So each one of these things had their own difficulties around doing those migrations and everything. But now you get to the cloud, and now you've got maybe somebody coming, breathing down your neck and saying, look, we need to save money. It turns out, we're not actually an email company. We're kind of a widget company. Why are we hosting our own email? This doesn't make any sense, And now what you're doing is asking a guy who has now had a career administering Exchange to, as his last act in this job, migrate you off to the cloud and then seek another job, hopefully within the company. But it's kind of a tough sell for people like that. I mean, people like that understandably look at the cloud with some reservation, So there is a lot of hesitancy, I think, to the cloud. There's also this kind of weird thing. It's sort of the technology version of, not built here, where we're just used to it. So it's a weird tradition that we're used to doing this stuff ourselves, and we feel like we have more control over it and all that kind of stuff. But I think the cloud is a very natural transition, and it's one of those things where, sort of like seatbelts in cars or smoking or anything else, we're going to look back and say, did we really do that? I mean, we as a toy company or we as a widget company actually hosted our own email. That's crazy,
I mean, a lot of people are still doing it.
Yeah, well, of course, and it's a transition. So some of this stuff is what they call low-hanging fruit. Like email is the classic example. It's a very easy use case to make an argument for. As you get into some of the management stuff, especially, or the Azure stuff, I mean, sometimes it takes a little while to understand like why this is better or advantageous. And of course, Microsoft being Microsoft, they do a lot of the integration bits too. So they let you have hybrid environments where you can have you can spin up VMs that are in your domain that are in Azure. You can have local things. You can mix and match. You can replicate Active Directory across to Azure. You can do failover and backup and all this stuff. And it's fairly amazing. But I think the big takeaway here, though, is just that Microsoft, which is perceived by many people to be kind of slow moving, is actually moving very quickly in this arena and has in fact transitioned their entire product line basically over to services. Even traditional software like Office and Windows is essentially delivered and serviced as a service. It's kind of an amazing transition.
What's amazing to me is that, we are, let's say, 7 years into this, the concept of cloud being I mean, let's go based on Gmail, So obviously it's going to take a while for enterprise to pick up, but there's still companies out there, there are still people in IT that are saying, no, I don't want to go over there yet. They don't trust the concept of it.
And there always will be, right? And there'll always people who will kind of try to remind you that you don't know what you're talking about. There are regulatory and compliance reasons why I can't do this. And, yes, I got it. We know. Everyone knows this. The whole world is not going to be 100% public cloud, but
and it shouldn't be. And it shouldn't be.
Right. But it is going to be a mesh of what they're calling clouds. And I know some people don't like the term, but it is going to be a mesh of what we call private clouds, meaning on-site infrastructure, hosted clouds, which are hosted externally, public clouds, which obviously are public, but are also kind of shared resources that you have up in some service like SkyDrive or Office 365 or whatever. This is where the industry's going. It just is. I mean, you can try to fight it and you can try to argue your way through it, but it's going to happen with or without you. And
absolutely.
Microsoft's right at the forefront of it, and I think they've just done an amazing job with it. So much so that, and it's funny because I predicted this, and now apparently it's happening.
Oh, you are a prophet.
I am a prophet. Right? I should wear a robe.
A Windows prophet.
I wrote that Microsoft should reorganize itself around devices and services, and that its corporate structure should mirror this push that they're doing, and it looks like they're in fact considering that right now. Apparently.
Well. we saw the services become a big thing, when they took it out of I guess the header, they became a services company, and they are. I mean, in all reality, and they're doing it right even for the consumer. You look at something like Live 365, which,
Right.
I have a subscription for. I'm paying $10 a month. I just had to reinstall it when I blew away the MacBook Pro, and it was so easy because I went to, I logged into Live 365, and it says, hey, you've installed this on 3 out of the 5 computers that you're allowed. And there's a little button that says delete it, remove the, I guess, whatever authentication off of this computer, which I hadn't done. I should have done it before. And I just reinstalled it.
You can do it anytime you want.
Yeah, and boom, it was done. I mean, it was done so well.
Yeah.
And this is,
it's
this is
even
cloud
better
service.
than that, by the way. You don't even have to decommission it. I mean, you could just, you could have 10 computers registered. Only 5 are going to be active at that time. I mean, one of them could be a computer that hasn't been online in 2 years or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not
pretty intelligent.
It's not this draconian DRM thing that's, terrible, where you do something like blow away your computer and, oh, damn it, I forgot to unregister iTunes, or I forgot to unregister Adobe Photoshop or something. And now you're screwed because you've used up one of your PC instances. The only thing you can do is contact support and hope for the best.
That's really funny because I had that happen. I use a software. I don't want to say the company, but they use a weird authentication thing where you have to decommission it before you delete it.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you have to send them an email and say like, hey, listen, I deleted the copy off of my MacBook Pro, and they have to manually do it, and it might take 5 days till they get back to you. And you can't install it until you can't, I guess, activate it until you do that. I want to talk about something that I stumbled upon, and I was blown away by this. I was talking to somebody about iCloud, and they were telling me how great it was. My wife has it for her phone. I have it on my iPad, and I've really never logged into the web interface for iCloud. Yep. And I was wondering, I'm like, I wonder where my photos go when it's backed up. Like, where does it go? Yeah, you can't really access. And I find this out. I thought it was like in the iCloud menu. So when you log into iCloud, it says like contacts, reminders, whatever, calendar. And then I thought there'd be a little thing that says photos. So you click on photos and there's all your pictures. And that's not the case with iCloud. And I thought, wow, this is so dumb. Why wouldn't they give you web access to the photos that you have? How do you access this? So the way that you do it, apparently, is either when you reconnect on your phone to iCloud, it resyncs everything, or you use iPhoto and it resyncs it with iPhoto. And I'm thinking,
so I was going to, before knowing the details, what I was going to say to you is that Apple doesn't want you accessing your content from anywhere. They want you accessing your content on their devices.
Well, that's what I thought. But you know what? I realized why they do this. Their authentication for your iCloud account is so ass backwards, where I was able to figure out, I could have done it if I wanted to, but I didn't do it. But I was able to put in, I know, obviously I know people's email addresses, which is mostly their iCloud account number. I was able to put it in, say, hey, I lost my password. Hey, and then it says like, oh, do you want to email, or do you want to do your like safety question? And always the question is, what is your pet's name? So, 5 people that I know, obviously I know their dog or cat's name, and I put it in and it says, hey, put in your new password. And I just remembered, I'm like, this is why they probably didn't add the photos to their web portal, to their website access, because they don't have 2-step authentication.
Oh, jeez.
I could have changed everybody's password. I mean, I tried 5 people, and out of the 5, I was able to guess the, whatever authentication password it was. The reminder question.
Because you know their pet's name?
Because I know their pet's name.
That's funny.
And that's what everybody had. Everybody had a pet's name. So I tried my wife's, and what was it? Hey, what is your pet's name? And I put in, the pet's name, and bam, there you go. Do you want to change your password?
That's funny.
It was the simplest thing ever. I've never, and you know what? Facebook, Gmail, almost every service that I've used, Outlook, they've all done, either you could submit a phone number or you get an email alert. That's the only way to do it. There's no way to just go in and change it. I was so surprised at how easy it was to change someone's password. I was blown away
eventually, by the way, passwords are going to go away. I mean, and this is going to be the greatest day ever. But 2-step or two-factor authentication is probably, one step down that road. Biometric security is going to be one, facial recognition. I mean, the ways that I was talking, that's one of the things they're adding to Windows 8.1 is these biometric scanners. Like, if you've ever had a Lenovo ThinkPad or whatever, you can swipe your finger on a little thing.
Sure.
It's very particular. You have to do it at a certain angle. You have to do it the way you did it the first time you registered your finger and all that kind of stuff. And the way that this thing works, the new types of biometric thing is you just touch it. You can touch it at any angle. You just touch it. It knows it's you. And you log in, and somebody actually asked, well, what about a dead person? Could you kill someone like you see in a movie and like press their finger? And he said, no, that doesn't work.
I was actually thinking,
if you kill someone,
face.
you got to press the finger within like 3 seconds.
That's actually really funny.
Yeah, like that's how that thing's gonna work.
Wear him as a mask. That's what I was imagining. But so because I realized that, oh my God, the passwords are so easy to kind of hack. I thought, I'm like, you know what? This was possibly a conscious effort by Apple to say, you know what? We didn't put in two-factor authentication, so we're not going to put in the photos because we don't want people to lose their photos. If they lose their contacts, that's fine. This is my.
You're
theory
giving them a
behind
lot
this.
of credit here.
This is my theory behind this. I think that's why you can't access the photos on iCloud.
I think it's because Apple hates you.
That could be it. That could be it.
It does. It has a very nice, like kind of meshy looking background, though.
Very, very nice and meshy. Very nice. I imagine
terrible.
that's going to be out the window with the next version. No more mesh. I want to talk a little bit about Intel and some of the changes coming with the Haswell chip, because this could be possibly a humongous game changer for them in the likes of the Core 2 and how that changed everything.
Right. Well, yeah.
This is a very impressive chipset that they're putting out. In more than one way. I mean, the fact that they're going to have this thing is going to be very light on the PC and very cool, to the point that a lot of these tablets will not require a fan, and you're going to be able to get some horsepower out of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to it's hard to figure out exactly which ones are which because they have so many different versions. But as far as the desktop chips go, not a heck of a lot of improvements from performance wise. I mean, the integrated graphics are better, but the integrated graphics were not necessarily great to start with. But yeah, things get really interesting when you look at the mobile versions of these chipsets. The ones that are going to go in tablets and so forth. And it's weird because from sort of a die size perspective, it's the same 22 nanometer process that we saw with the previous generation, but
with Clover Trail.
With Ivy Bridge.
Ivy Bridge, okay.
But what they've done is built in amazing power management technology.
Yeah. And
it's essentially that same system on a chip style connected standby capability that you previously could only get with an ARM chip or with the Atom, the Clover Trail chip. And so it's kind of that best of both worlds things. It's the performance of a real Ivy Bridge, mainstream core processor combined with the power management of those chips that were designed for very, light and mobile devices. Well, so yes, the potential this year is pretty big.
For Haswell, I think the difference for the power consumption, it really comes down to the 3-step rather than 2 steps with Ivy Bridge, right? There's active, there's sleep, and then there's active idle, where before it was just active and sleep.
So there's all kinds of ways that this stuff translates into real world, importance. So for example, these things come awake semi-instantly. So, there are still people who are freaking out because they can't find the shutdown command in Windows 8. But the way these things are designed, the new hardware is you don't turn this thing off really. If it's a laptop, you close the lid. If it's a tablet, you just put it down. It goes to sleep like a phone does. You don't really have to think about it. And the interesting thing is that while consuming almost next to no power, these things can sit in this standby mode and be there for weeks and never really drain too much battery power. They can still ping, Windows Update. They could update for Metro apps, and they can keep your system up to date without killing the battery.
And that's a big deal. That's a huge deal.
Yeah. Especially,
if we're going to talk about the tablets, the fact that you're going to be able to get some serious performance out of these things, because at Computex, they demoed a very thin tablet, and it was running Haswell, where if it was the same exact computer with Clover Trail, it would have needed a fan this one no longer needs a fan because it's able to run much cooler.
Right.
I think that's
Right.
a major thing. I mean, when we're seeing, I mean,
fanless PCs are huge. Yeah.
I mean, especially think about the Ultrabooks. You know, if probably the Ultrabooks are going to be running I think slightly bigger chip, and it's going to require it, but they're still requiring only 15 watts.
Sure.
Which is, a very light power consumption. I mean, it's not really sucking up juice.
Well, and by the way, the other part of this is battery life. So when you're talking about a mobile device, these things really matter. Like a Surface Pro today gets maybe 4 to 5 hours of battery life, which is like,
With how much usage, though, Paul? Like,
what do you mean?
What are you doing on it that you're getting 4 to 5 hours of battery life on that thing?
Just using it. I mean, I measure the way I measure this stuff is just the way I use it. So, for example, on the laptop I'm using right now, which is a 15-inch Ultrabook, this thing gets over 7 hours of battery life, normal usage. So actually, I was describing that morning where I was taking notes at all those events and everything. I didn't plug that thing in until I had lunch, and it still had, I don't remember what it said, 4 hours and 10 minutes or something of battery life left. I mean, it was raring to go, and it had been used, pretty seriously that entire day, or that entire half day, I guess. If you could take a device that gets 4 to 5 hours of battery life and do nothing other than change the chipset out and get 7 or 8 hours of battery life, I mean that turns into a completely different equation. And of course, there are other advantages to the Haswell chips, like you were describing, where you can actually make those devices thinner and lighter as well. Overall, these improvements, when you add them all together, make for a significantly different experience.
Well, I mean, the battery life technology is still something that it seems like the speed and reliability of these chipsets have reached a certain point where we're using it and it's like, wow, everything is fast now. I mean, we're not even talking about how many megahertz something is anymore. If you look
Unless
at
you're playing games on a computer, or I suppose doing something really high end.
I mean, I don't really.
It just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, for like the average person. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember I bought a computer and I was like, wow, did you get the 750 megahertz one or the whatever? Yeah. And I think I think everything is so fast now. Even if you get an i5, you're still getting really good performance out of this thing. You're still able to do a lot of stuff.
I think this stuff is so good that Intel should consider not even bothering with 3 different versions of this thing. Like I just don't understand what the point of it is anymore.
Yeah, I mean, possibly that might be it. I mean, when you're looking at what they're planning on doing eventually, they're going to have 4 different variants of this chip. They can have the H, which is their high-end i7 model. They're going to have the M, which is, I guess, mobile. They're going to have U for Ultrabooks. They're going to have Y, which is low, and Y is a low-powered system on a chip type device. What's going to run those Y, variants of this new Haswell chip? Is it going to be little net-top boxes? I'm curious what's going to be used for.
No, that's going to be a tablet where you can attach a keyboard to it and have it be like a detachable Ultrabook kind of thing.
Interesting. So
yeah, those will be the systems that compete with like the ARM RT stuff or the like the Clover Trail type Atom products.
And obviously, they're going to run a full version of Windows 8. These chips.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's going to be. I mean, then why do you need RT? Big. Then why do you need RT?
We keep coming back to that. I don't know. I've never understood why we needed it. Even in this current generation, a lowly Atom Clover Trail processor outperforms an ARM chip.
I mean, was it
compatible with everything you use?
Was that what it was?
I honestly believe that they did it because, I part of it I think was just trying to convince Intel / force Intel into making their chips more modern and energy efficient and more applicable to these mobile scenarios, right? That if they hadn't done this, that maybe we wouldn't be seeing some of the stuff we're talking about today.
No, and I agree with you. I think that's a major thing. We've seen what's happened with Intel in the past where AMD was kicking their butt all over the place and they kind of woke up and they said, okay, we got to do something. And they almost stumbled on this, by mistake with the Core 2s.
Well, I think that's part of it. The other part is just the hedging your bet kind of thing. I mean, if Intel really didn't play ball, Intel would have found itself in a position where it had kind of wrapped up the market for desktop computers and had seen the market for portable computers go somewhere else. And definitely going forward, today, that is the bigger market. They need to really pay attention to this mobility stuff. Intel doesn't get a lot of wins in the smartphone / tablet space.
No, no, and it's I mean,
is something they need to pay attention.
We're
to.
talking about a market that's almost 7-8 years of maturity at this point. From the point of the iPhone, and they have virtually no presence in.
Right,
and it's not a good thing. I have my pointer here, and I'm gonna yell at them. I'm going to use it with Intel. I want to talk about the battery technology and how that's changed and what's going on with that, because I'm really fascinated with battery technology and how lack of development there has been with new technologies with battery consumption and the way that these batteries work. Because the batteries are performing at nearly the same rate over the last, the technology that we're using right now for the lithium-ion batteries in these things is about 10 years old, and there has been virtually no change in 10 years. A lot of companies have implemented bigger batteries, but the way that the cells work and I guess with the memory of them is not that great.
So I agree that I think the underlying battery tech hasn't changed too much. On the other hand, Intel and other companies obviously have done a much better job with battery management. And I have to say, in the past, I would get some gigantic Dell laptop. I would swap out the drive bay with a battery to get extra, life or whatever. And I don't remember anymore what the life cycle was like on something like that. But I can say with some assurance that, this current Ultrabook that I have, which is wicked thin and very light, and it has a very big screen, by the way, too, which, it has to impact battery life. Like I said, it gets like 7 hours of battery life. And so this is sort of like, it's not really software because, obviously it's a chipset, but, using the firmware, if you will, in these chipsets, Intel has kind of wrestled as much battery life out of this stuff as they can within the constraints of the fact that it still has to be an x86 compatible processor. The ARM chips and the types of systems that you see in like really portable devices like smartphones can do other things and have tricks that they can use. You'll notice when you use a phone, you look away from a phone for a second, the screen goes right off. Phones
they've
are
gotten a lot
designed,
smarter.
they're hyper sensitive to battery life, and they still get really lousy battery life.
You pick up an Android phone, you'll see what lousy is.
Yeah, it's like when you used to drive an American car from the 70s up a hill. You could watch the gas, gauge go down in real time. You know what I mean?
That's funny. I want to go into this, but before we do, we need to take a little break and talk about Squarespace. And I want to thank Squarespace for supporting What the Tech and what we do here on the show. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. What is Squarespace? It's an all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website, blog, portfolio, and now online store. I want to talk about the online store aspect because this is really interesting. And somebody that I've developed websites for people. I work with people that develop websites. This is the hardest thing for them to do, is create an e-commerce solution for a lot of clients. And I'll get into why. But before I do that, I want to say, if you want to try Squarespace, you could get a free trial and 10% off your first purchase by going to squarespace.com and you use the offer code WhatTheTech6. That's WhatTheTech6. So the reason why it's so difficult for someone to create an e-commerce solution is because, A, there's a lot of development that goes into it. B, you have to kind of create custom code and create a shopping cart and create all this stuff. And it's a major pain in the butt. Nobody wants to do it. And the quotes that I've gotten from people, they've told me that they've been quoted $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to create a simple shopping cart. And that's how I feel, Paul. I feel like coughing every time someone brings that up to me. Go ahead. That's actually what I do when they tell me the amount. I actually choke because it's so expensive. With Squarespace, you could do it all by yourself. It's powered by them. It's powerful. It's flexible. And it's a great e-commerce solution. So what they do is they set up a template, allows you to sell both physical and digital media, digital goods like MP3s and ebooks and things like that. And you get the reliability of Squarespace. You get the support of Squarespace, and they make it very, very easy. If you're a business and you're looking to kind of start selling things, honestly, you really should look at Squarespace as a solution for that. I've been dealing with people, and I'm losing business because I'm sending them to Squarespace. So this is something that I really, really think is a major, major thing. They have the blogs. You could do that. They have, if you're a photographer, you could do that. But I really want to stress that the e-commerce solution that they have is mind-blowingly advanced compared to a lot of the WordPress stuff that you could do, and it's dirt cheap because you're going to be able to manage everything on your own. Squarespace.com is a website, and use offer code WhatTheTech6 so you get a free trial, and you get 10% off your next purchase. So, you know what? Try it out. See how it works. Learn it, and then sign up, and tell them we sent you because I don't want to be hit. Paul hits me every time I forget to use the promo code WhatTheTech. Don't hit me, Paul. Please.
Okay.
Please. I want to thank Squarespace for supporting What the Tech. So with the battery stuff, Paul, I want to go into it because this has been something that I've been fascinated by, even down to, let's say, like the Tesla. All they're doing is strapping insane amounts of lithium-ion batteries. And my biggest question has been with the Tesla is, okay, so you have this car for, let's say, 5 years. You spent $90,000 on it. What is your charge going to be like in 5 years if you're using this thing every day? How is it? Is it like the battery rot that exists with lithium ion? It's far better than the nickel hydride that we were using prior to, but it's still bad.
Yep.
I mean, my MacBook Pro, the battery thing, it's a decent battery in this thing and it's able to hold a charge. But over the last 3 years that I've had this thing, it's not performing at the same level. So, what's the fix for this? And honestly, there's been only one thing that I've read really, and it doesn't really have to do with the cells, but it has to do with the coating on the inside of the battery, where it prevents the rot from happening at the rate that it does. So really, what do you?
It sounds like alchemy.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, I really don't know, to be honest.
But I mean, with batteries like this on, let's say, like a laptop, is the answer the power management of the chipset, or is it better battery life, better battery technology? Because things are also getting faster and displays are getting bigger. We talk about, well, it's like the phone. It's able to kind of manage it smarter, and it's able to kind of know when you put it to your face. It's able to kind of manage services and what takes up battery life. But if we're constantly getting bigger and better, we're constantly fighting that kind of evolution of it.
It's not necessarily getting continually more complex. I mean, obviously, we're going to have higher resolution displays, but we also have smarter software that draws what is essentially like vector type graphics rather than individually computing, and well, no, actually it is individually computing rather than just painting every pixel based on some kind of a bitmap display. That helps, and so when you think about what Microsoft did in Windows 8 specifically, because it applies to all of this stuff, the Metro environment is not completely resolution independent, but it is far more resolution independent than the old desktop. It's much more efficient with what it paints on the screen. It's a full screen environment, so you don't have a lot of different windows with worries about repainting the screen all the time when things obscure and then unobscure other parts of the screen and so forth. You don't have to worry about that. It's a mobile OS. It will silently in the background kill processes automatically to preserve the performance and also battery life of the system. It has those deep power management states like connected standby and so forth, so it can work more efficiently that way. I mean, those things all work in tandem to help this system be more efficient than its predecessors. So on a computer like mine, if I were to be able to run this without ever accessing the desktop, theoretically at least, it should deliver far better battery life than would running the Windows desktop. That's right. So in other words, or imagine a future version of it. Like Dell today introduced a machine that has some crazy high quad HD resolution, right? And so my machine today has a 1600 by 900 display. The version they will release this year will no doubt have a 1920 by 1080 display. Mm-hmm. The version they release next year could have like a 32, whatever the number is, 3264 by 2400, whatever the crazy numbers are. Those numbers sound nuts, and you think, wow, to drive that kind of resolution on a screen where the screen size hasn't changed and nothing else has changed, requires a lot more power. It's not going to get very good battery life. But by the time we get to those much higher resolution screens, the theory, at least, is that we're going to be running a more efficient OS, this Metro thing, on it that will have all those advantages I just described, and that the underlying chipset will be more efficient as well. It will be like Haswell or one of its successors, and that these things combined are what is going to make the difference. And so even though it is in some ways more sophisticated, it's also more efficient, and that's going to make up the difference, even if the battery technology doesn't change at all.
I'm hoping that we see a big boost with this, because Intel entering in the mobile market as far as phones go and tablets go, they have the ability to kind of, dictate where the market goes. I mean, really, based on their performance, if we're able to get far better performance with an Intel chipset, guess what? Everybody's going to buy an Intel-based, mobile phone and whatever, and tablet. I'm just hoping that it's actually good. We're not going to get another what was their crappy? Not the Atom, before the Atom, Celeron.
Sure. Well, Celeron may outlive Atom. By the way, I don't know if you heard this, but
which is crazy.
I guess they're considering rebranding some of the Atom stuff as Celeron and/or Pentium, which is another blast from the past that somehow has transitioned its way to the modern day.
Do you also think that some of these brands have a negative stigma, like Atom and Celeron have totally negative? Like if I see an Atom logo on something, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, it's not just Intel either. I mean, I said the same thing, when Windows Phone came out, for example. I mean, maybe naming that thing Windows wasn't such a great idea.
Yeah,
maybe Windows Azure should be called Azure.
What do you think of that Dell, the new Dell tablets, those convertible tablets that they've come out with, the XPS? Because it's that same weird bezel thing that we were talking about, 2 years ago, when the first
the 12 is. So the XPS 12, that's an update to the one that's out now. I see that in ads or whatever, and I think to myself, that looks hokey to me. It swivels around inside of its frame. That looks like something that could bend and be broken or whatever.
Well, it wasn't even the bending. My biggest problem was the fact that when you have that thing as like a laptop, you can see right through those holes.
Yeah,
like it doesn't sit perfectly. There's no like rubber maybe in the middle to like kind of block the back of it.
So this is coincidental, but at this show, I've actually had a bit of time to look at this machine.
And how was it?
And it's okay. It's actually okay. Dell is a company where I used to buy Dell products fairly exclusively for a long, long time. I've had lots of Dell laptops. And I don't know. It's not that they did anything particularly bad, but they kind of lost me. I think it was more the excellence of other computers, particularly like Lenovo type computers, that drew me away. But I look at these machines and I think they're getting interesting again. And the XPS 12, that one's an update to an existing computer. It's not as thrilling to me, but the XPS 11, which is this super high res display one that they just announced. So it's an 11-inch screen. It's basically like the Lenovo IdeaPad Yoga in that the screen can swivel around 360 degrees basically, and you can flip it around on its back, and you can use it as a tablet. That is a really interesting looking machine, and it has a crazy high resolution display. I think this is the one that they're calling Quad HD.
This one I have for people who are listening. I'm sorry I have it pulled up on the screen, but it's 2560 by 1440. Yeah.
For an 11-inch display, that's big.
Yeah. It weighs less than 2.5 pounds, and this is the 12, the XPS 12, which has that swivel thing with the bezel around it, which I think is insane.
I don't like it.
I really think it's insane.
But I threw that one in there just because I don't have a lot to write about either one of these things. But the one big advance in the XPS 12 is that they have gotten significantly better performance and battery life out of this thing. And they're not saying it explicitly, but I believe it's because of the Haswell processor. And then for the XPS 11, which is not coming out until later this year, the question is, what processor is in there? Is this going to be a Bay Trail? Is it going to be one of those really low-power Haswell chips? We don't know.
You know what I'm curious about? Like, I'm looking at this Dell, right? And I'm going to pull it up on the screen. You see how, like, the bottom is thick, right? That bottom. Why does it have to be thick if it's totally detached from the screen? So, like, what's in there?
Well, okay, so that machine, actually, everything's in there. So that's the machine.
The bottom.
That's the thing. Like, yeah, that tablet part, or the screen part that looks like a tablet's not a tablet. That doesn't actually ever come off. It is still connected internally.
How is it being connected though? Through, I guess,
it must be coming up through the rods there. So they're
it's magic.
Clearly, yeah, it's wide-eye. No, I don't know what it is, but it's that's just a display. So that part can be thin. If you go back up, if you don't mind, to the XPS 11. Now this one is the same design, right? It's in the sense that the screen is still a screen, so it's probably hard to see in the shot. But the screen part of this thing is still going to be less thick than the base part, because the base part's where the processor and the battery, that stuff is. The other way to go with this that Dell's not doing here, at least, is to have all the guts be in the screen. And you have the tablet kind of pops off from the keyboard, and the tablet is the computer, and then that becomes the thicker part. And because of the way that these portable computers have been for years and years and years, those designs are still kind of hard to get used to because they're so, they look like they're top heavy or something.
Yeah.
Design.
And you had a chance to play around with the Iconia, the W3.
Yeah.
How was that?
I liked it. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but last September when I went to New Zealand, before Windows 8 came out, I had a chance to get my hands on what was actually, I think it was an RT device, but it was it
but
RT or Windows?
It was bigger.
But it was bigger than this. But it was what it was a 10-inch Iconia tablet that was, for the time we were just starting to understand what these computers were going to look like. It looked beautiful to me, thin and light and small and everything. And I've always thought that one of these machines, you could dock the thing, put it up to on a big screen, keyboard, mouse, would be kind of an interesting thing to carry around. As someone who travels a lot, I always want the smallest, lightest thing that I can get, as far as computers go. Problem is, I'm a humongous person, and I can't use these stupid little computers.
Well, little people like me, Paul.
Yeah, no,
we're fine.
For traveling, that would be fantastic. So, in all other aspects of life, no. But this computer is interesting to me because the screen is small. It's a small tablet. It's an 8-inch tablet. It's got a widescreen display. It gets great battery life. All that kind of stuff. It's not super expensive, but you can dock it onto. It's actually, I shouldn't say dock. It's a Bluetooth connection, but it's got a little kind of a gap in the keyboard. And you can kind of place the tablet part on there, and it looks like a laptop. But the base, the keyboard base, is the keyboard base from a full size 13-inch Ultrabook.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
It's kind of funny looking, but you know what? For someone like me, honestly, this might be an incredible type solution. Now, knowing me, I'm probably not going to be happy with it, but for a lot of people who travel and want to be able to work on a plane in tight conditions, want to carry the very least amount of stuff, weight-wise and so forth, this thing could be an incredibly versatile machine. And then on the other hand, it's also just a very small, it's the first 8.1-inch Windows 8 tablet. It also would be a decent media machine just to have music on there and movies and so forth. Good battery life, just something you might use on the plane or where in your hotel room or whatever to watch or enjoy content. So very interested in this one. The pre-orders on that machine went up today, and so you can go to Amazon or MicrosoftStore.com or a few other places, and you can order it. And we don't know when it's going to come out, but I think sometime by the end of the month is when it's due. And with Build coming at the end of the month, there's a theory that Microsoft might be giving away this tablet to
very cool
attendees of Build, right?
So what was the Microsoft Windows experience on an 8-inch tablet? Did it make, was there any kind of change? Was there
no, it's
like
not,
a disconnect of sorts? Did certain things kind of not register because it's a small display?
Well, so two things on that. The interesting thing about this was it was sitting on a table with a bunch of Windows 8.1 machines. And so, or what looked like Windows 8.1 machines. And so what I discovered was I walked up and I'm looking at them, and there was a ThinkPad Helix was there, and one of the new Dells was there, and a bunch of other machines, and one of the very large machines as well, like there's some kind of a 20-something inch tablet thing that you can dock and use as a computer, whatever. So I was kind of looking at them, and I'm looking at the screen of that little Acer, and I'm thinking, something looks wrong here.
Yeah.
What's the story? And I realized it looked like it was running Windows 8.1. And the more I looked at it, the more it just didn't seem right. And so I reached out to touch the screen and swipe it around. And what I discovered was that it swiped over to another start screen that was also Windows 8.1, but was a different design. And then I realized this is just like a screenshot.
Oh my God!
What they did was on some of the machines on the table were actually Windows 8 machines.
Okay.
And so they had, if you go back and look at the two start screen designs that Microsoft showed off last week, those are they made giant screenshots of them and they put them on each of the machines.
Oh, that's insane.
So that particular computer will in fact be out in a couple of weeks and is running Windows 8, of course, because Windows 8.1 is not coming out.
So they had a screenshot of 8.1. So when you swiped it, it just went to Windows 8.
It went to the next screenshot.
Oh, that's crazy.
Screenshot. Yeah. So, you could take a picture of these machines, and what it would look like is they were all running Windows 8.1.
But they weren't.
And then as I played around with the machines, what I discovered was that a couple of those machines were like that. They had screenshots, and then a couple of them were in fact actually Windows 8.1.
I imagine a giant hand was going to come and like slap you when you went to go swipe.
Oh, by the way, I was waiting for this the entire time. In fact, I was really surprised they let me go at it for a while. In fact, they never stopped me. In fact,
that's funny.
I should not admit this, but I actually witnessed them stopping someone else from looking at them, which I thought was a little strange. But they actually let me play with them, and
that's funny.
Yeah. So as far as that machine goes, I mean, it's 1280 by 800, which is I think an appropriate resolution for that screen. But what you can't do is the snap mode, right? Because that requires 1366 by 768. I actually think that's fine too, to be honest, on it, because again, on a screen that small, I don't think a lot of people are going to want to do
multiple
snap as it exists today in Windows 8. Although we'll look at this when Windows 8.1 comes out, whether they change the requirements for that, because the snapping feature is going to work differently.
What do you think they're going to concentrate on build this year, since we're getting some of these things already?
They've alluded to a lot of there are a lot more changes coming in Windows 8.1 that they haven't talked about. And Build being a developer conference, it's not a hard guess to make that they're going to talk about developer stuff, but it's important to understand what that means, because it's not just stuff that developers can write apps to APIs and so forth. When you talk about those kind of features, you also are talking about new underlying features of the operating system. And so we've had at TechEd this kind of discussion around here are the business and enterprise features for Windows 8.1. I think the next time we're going to wrap up the rest of the new features that are coming. Like by the time this happens, Microsoft will have started blogging about it, and so any day now or next week or whenever, they're going to start having occasional blog posts about, here's some new here's a deep dive into some new feature coming in Windows 8.1. Some of that stuff will be new, some of it will be stuff we already knew, but Build will be the final big revelation, and of course the release of the code too, which is why they're doing it that way.
I mean, for me, the biggest what I'm waiting to hear from Build is development for the Xbox.
Right.
That's really, I mean, that's what I'm waiting for. If they're going to say, okay, we're opening up to all developers. Here are the what you have to do.
They're either going to say we are doing the right thing, or we are the biggest bunch of idiots on this earth, and we screwed it up. There's like no way around it.
Where do you see it falling?
I cannot imagine them not doing the right thing.
Yeah,
I just can't.
They have to open it up.
So some of the things that are going to happen at Build is there'll be these new beta versions of Visual Studio Express 2013, right? There'll be one for phone. There'll be one for Windows 8. Hopefully there'll be one for Xbox One, right? That will allow developers not just to write games, by the way, although I think that will be part of it, but to write apps that run on this platform, that over time you'll be able to create a project in Visual Studio that will have outputs for Windows 8, for phone, and for Xbox, and you maybe have to screw around a little bit to make those changes
But
work.
It'll be an easy transition.
It'll be an easy transition, yeah. I really, really think that this is such a strength for them. It would be so stupid to ignore this.
Listen, Apple has not opened up development for Apple TV.
Sure.
So
I know.
And they have this plethora of apps. That's pretty much running on the same platform.
Feeling that it's only a matter of time before they do. And, they just announced really good sales figures for Apple TV. They've got WWDC coming up anytime now. It would be stupid for Apple not.
Well, that's another one. Yeah, it would be really stupid.
Maybe that's iOS 7. It's going to be for Apple TV too.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. It'd be dumb for them not to do that.
It's amazing, right? I mean, we're talking about even let's take Apple, for example, okay? Apple is pretty much running on iOS, Apple TV. It's the same exact thing. Why not open the App Store and say, okay, Apple TV apps, you have access to these. Just like how there's an iPad, there's iPad apps, iPhone apps, and Apple TV apps.
Well, one reason is you can touch the screen on an iOS device, and Apple TV doesn't have that. So they have a very rudimentary controller.
Well, maybe Steve fixed that. Maybe that's it. The controller.
Okay. We'll see.
Why do you even need a controller? I mean, that's crazy that you need a controller for an Apple TV.
It doesn't have any way to register your voice. It doesn't have a Connect style gesture.
No, but I mean, the big selling point would be, hey, use your iPhone, use your iPad, second screen experience.
There you go. Okay, there you go. All right,
you don't need it.
Problem. Yep.
If you're buying an Apple TV,
I'm sorry, are you suggesting that Apple would require you to have a second Apple device?
Oh, it's absurd. I know, it's absurd. They would never do such a thing.
How much money would that cost? They must be They would never do that.
You know, it could all be yours for a discounted rate of $499.
Sure.
Oh, by the way, before we wrap
I know
up,
what you're going to say. Don't say it. Don't say it. Let me guess. Can I guess what you're going to say?
Yes. Go ahead.
You're going to say that they replaced the low-end iPod with a new one.
Yes.
They knew it.
I was screaming about this for 6 months, and they still did it wrong. They still screwed you. They still figure out a way to screw you. You know what it was? I'm telling you.
I admit when I saw that, you were the first person I thought of.
And you know what? I have this whole theory. They heard me say this. They all heard it. Everybody at Apple. They're all big fans of What the Tech and Paul Thurrott. They're huge Paul Thurrott fans.
Yes, they are.
And I'm really thinking it's like, oh, yeah, you know what? We didn't sell too many iPod Touches this season. There was a lot of confusion. A lot of people were upset. Let's give them the new iPod Touch. But wait a minute. Let's not just give it to them. Let's screw them somehow. I know how. Let's take away the camera.
Not just the camera. They also took away the strap.
Which strap? What strap? There's a strap?
Yeah, the iPod Touch 5th generation or whatever they're calling it has a strap. There's a little button in the back corner that you can put a colored strap on.
Oh, cute. They took that away too.
Yep.
So they have a 16 gig model now.
Yep.
And it's $229, and there's no rear-facing camera on that thing, which is baffling because I think that's a perfect way to...
So let me ask you something about this machine. Have you actually seen one in person?
I have not. Not that. I've seen, obviously, the 5th gen, but not that one.
Yeah. I'm just curious if it looks exactly the same, but it's just black and white or whatever.
I'm not too sure. Let me see.
They don't really... You gotta look to find this thing on their site. They're not pushing it, you know?
Really? Let's see. iPod. Let's go through the experience here. iPod Touch. These have cameras, okay. iPod Touch. And they're talking about how brilliant it is. Oh, here we go. All the way on the bottom. New iPod Touch 16 gig. So they tell you how great the iPod Touch 5th gen is. They show you the cameras. They show you the colors. Brilliant design. And then all the way at the bottom.
The strap?
Yeah, they have straps.
The yellow one. See? Right
it's a leather strap, too. Look at that. So let's click on buy. I want to see if there's a picture of it. Oh, isn't this interesting? So look at this. The 16 gig, they're showing you, so there's no camera here, but every other photo has a camera.
Right.
So once again, somebody's getting a nice graduation gift.
So,
Mom, you know what I really want for graduation? What do you want? I want an iPod Touch.
I want a camera on this thing, though. I sort of wish they would make a cameraless version in different memory sizes.
Why wouldn't you want the camera?
Why would I want a camera? Because am I the only person on earth that uses a device for one thing?
Yeah, pretty much are. Yeah. If people could they'd cook with their phone too. They'd stir with their phone.
Stir with it.
That's a good way to use an Android phone. Just start stirring stuff.
It might help the battery. Who knows?
But I mean, think about it. And this is who's buying this. I honestly think they're kids that are getting this. This is their first device, right? Mm-hmm. It's $200. It's not that much of an investment. Your kid is graduating, middle school, and he wants an iPod Touch. Tells his grandmother, "Can you buy me the iPod Touch?" They go to the store. They see the 16 gig. He's imagining he's going to go in the woods and take pictures of things because that's what he wants to do. He wants to walk around the woods. And he gets his camera. He gets the iPod Touch. He turns it around, and there's no freaking camera on the thing.
You know what? That's when he's going to notice it right there?
Worst graduation ever. Worst. I mean, it's silly. I mean, it's really silly. How much is it costing Apple to put, the camera on this thing? $20?
Well,
$10? $5?
50% margins don't invent themselves. You can't just give away like a $17 part. You have to.
But they're still charging you $229 instead of $199, right? And that had a camera. That always had a rear-facing camera. So we were kind of conditioned and told, well, it's not really the components. Really, it's not the display we're charging you. We're charging you for the memory. So 16, 32, 64. That's what you were paying extra for, the extra $100. Now,
I think it's time to acknowledge that what you're really paying for is the Apple logo.
Well, you know what's funny? They kind of control this market, right? There's no other device in this market that's competing with them. So you're screwed either way. You know what they're saying?
Well, but that's what I mean. In other words, in a market in which Apple sells every single version of anything ever made, You think they would get good component prices. You think maybe there could be some benefit to the scale of their operation, that they could pass that benefit along to consumers.
And why the $29? I'm really devastated over this device.
$29 is pure profit, baby. That's where it comes from.
Like, I've become that crazy guy that can't let go.
I know.
Like, this is my can't let go. Like,
I saw this thing and I said, Andrew's not going to like this.
Oh, you don't even know. Like, I've become a total conspiracy nut with this. Like, I'm writing on my wall. I'm drawing pictures of iPods. All the generations are lined up. Lines are going everywhere.
It's bad.
Finkel is Einhorn over and over again.
I honestly think nobody cares about this product anymore at all.
You don't think any... Really?
Yeah. I don't know when it happened because I kind of stopped looking, but when this version of the iPod first came out, last fall, whenever it was, September, October, whatever, there were no cases for it. And so it's a very delicate device. It's beautiful. You want to protect it.
It is. It's a really well-designed device.
Every month or so I'd go into an Apple store and look, and there were never any cases for it. And I was in Best Buy on that last trip, and I said, let me go let's see if there are iPod cases yet. And now there are. So now they finally have some cases for this thing. But it is sort of amazing to me how long it took for that to happen, because this kind of accessory market is always such a big deal for Apple products. And it seems like these things line up, in anticipation of the release.
Yeah, maybe you have a point. Maybe they're not selling.
I don't think they are anymore. Not like they. I mean, obviously they're selling, but not like they used to.
Do you want my theory with the cheaper iPhone that they're going to release?
Yes.
There's going to be no rear-facing camera. That's my theory.
No rear-facing camera?
Yeah, front-facing camera only. No rear-facing camera.
Wow.
They're gonna have a face. They're gonna call it the FaceTime HD camera, and they're gonna talk about how great it is at doing FaceTime, and it's not gonna have a camera in the rear.
Wow.
Why not?
I would be shocked.
That's what they're doing with that. I mean, they're kind of conditioning you now already with the iPod.
The camera from the iPhone 4S in the thing,
Oh no, that's crazy. I mean, why not? They could have put a camera in the iPod Touch, but they didn't do that either.
Apple hates you.
I've learned that. I've really learned that they dislike me.
A lot of people have not learned that yet. They just don't understand it. But
I mean, there's a whole conspiracy here, and I'm gonna figure it out. I'm so devastated over this. I really am. Like, I think it's crazy. Like, I think this is the craziest thing. Maybe I'm missing something. Like, why would you remove the camera from this device and still charge you $29 more than the previous generation 16 gig? I could have seen $229 with the camera.
Right. Well, it has a Retina display.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's what they're charging you for. The Retina. Ooh, you could get it in pink. That's what I'm going to do. Pink and yellow and blue and red and just amazing. I'm so devastated. What? I mean, wait a minute. Just before we wrap it up, the iPad Mini, does that have that has a camera?
No, it's 10. Oh, does it have a camera?
Yeah, that has a camera.
I think so.
They're gonna remove the camera in that too.
From the iPad Mini.
Yeah, no camera, gone. And they're gonna charge you $29 from the previous year.
$29 more.
Yeah, they're gonna charge you $29 more, and they're taking the camera away.
Oh, I bet it's gonna be more than $20 more. They're gonna.
I just imagine Tim Cook just standing there and screaming, "No camera for you! No camera for you!" at the store every time they buy the lower end one, and he just mocks you.
Maybe it could be like that Intel 486SX chip where you could just order it and then they could just snap it in when you buy it.
You just snap it.
Give another $29. There's a camera.
Just pay cash. There's like a guy that's like, "Hey, by the way, do you want
little cameras on like a giant sheet and they just pop them off one at a time?
Just glue them." The iCamera, we're just gluing it on now. All right. Enough of my rant. I got to show you this wall. It's in my attic. It's like my secret room. I just have pictures of iPods and iPads on the wall.
You got to give me a little bit of credit for knowing exactly what you were
talking about. You know what? We're one person now. We know. We're at that point in our relationship where we're just finishing each other's sentences.
Just finishing. Yes.
Yeah.
Or as I say in Arrested Development, finishing each other's sandwiches.
Have you watched the entire series?
No, I have a couple more to go.
Yeah. Eat your heart out, Laporte. Let's see you finish Paul's sentences.
Wow.
All right, let's wrap it up. Paul, that was a fun show. I had a lot of fun.
I'm going to go to bed.
Are you going to what time? It's like
I gotta
2
go back
o'clock.
to the
It's
show.
1 o'clock there. You're going back to the show?
Yeah, I gotta.
Are you going out drinking tonight?
Yeah, I gotta.
I discovered making martinis at home is a lot of fun, and didn't end too well for me last night. But I think I'm going to do the same right now. I'm going to make myself a martini.
Yeah, I had many beers last night.
Fun. For all things Paul Thurrott, go to winsupersite.com and check out everything he's writing. A lot of interesting posts this week. A lot of detailed posts. A Dell XPS post. Microsoft making a case for Windows 8.1 for business, which was a good read. If anybody's an enterprise, you should definitely check it out. And of course, Halo. I didn't even talk about Halo. We'll talk about it next week. And of course, check out Paul's other show with that other guy with the white hair. Leo. There you go. Windows Weekly with Leo Laporte and Mary Jo Foley. One of the only podcasts I still listen to. I stopped listening to everything. Everything bothers me now. You know what? Do me a favor. Can you bring up the iPod Touch on that show? It's like you don't even have to say it. It's like a little wink.
I'm not going to be on it this week.
Oh, you're not?
Yeah.
Oh, too bad. Next week, when you're on there next week, just be like crowbar it in somehow, like in the middle of like you guys are talking about Azure, and you're like, hey, you know what's really cool? That iPod Touch, and just like give me like a wink. That'll make my day. All right, guys, we'll see you all next week on What the Tech. Good night, everybody.